In the fall of 2022, I was in the middle of an extended photography road trip to Alaska when I noticed that there were clear skies in the forecast north of Dawson City in the Yukon, and my chances of being able to have a great night of shooting the northern lights were very good. I immediately punched in directions on Google Maps, which instructed me to take the top of the world highway through the Little Gold border crossing from Alaska into the Yukon, and with any luck, I would be in Dawson City by 3 p.m. Well, what Google failed to tell me was that the border crossing had closed early that year, and after spending an hour or two driving the top of the world highway, I reached a closed border and had no choice but to turn around. By that point, it was much too late to go all the way around back up on the Alcan Highway, and by the following day, more clouds were moving in and my chance was gone. I gave up on the Northern Lights and the Yukon for that year, as I already made arrangements to meet some friends in the Canadian Rockies and the leaves were already starting to fall. I promised myself that someday I would return if given the opportunity. It is the 29th of August and I am leaving. It's about 4:57, rolling out for the Yukon. So tonight I should be in Grants Pass. Off I go. Okay, so I think the McDonald's is me. I don't remember that last time. I am heading west on Route 16. Dease Lake, 10 and a half hours away. 960 kilometers from Prince George. Expected arrival time is about 6:30. I'll probably get there around 8:30 or something because I'm going to sleep and get some lunch. Work online. But yeah, Dease Lake today, and then maybe all the way up to Dawson City. Today is Saturday the 31st. Starting to turn yellow in spots. It's only 60 something outside, so I wonder if it's more of a sunlight thing than temperature that really begins to impact the changing of the leaves. On the third day after leaving Orange County in Southern California, I was heading west on the Yellowhead Highway out of Prince George. A mere 2 days ago, I was fighting the LA traffic on the 5 North through Atwater Village, and now there were long stretches where I wouldn't see any cars at all, and I began to notice the first signs of autumn as yellow leaves appeared on the passing trees. After 5.5 hours of driving northwest on the Yellowhead Highway, I turned onto the Stewart-Cassiar Highway.
Continue on British Columbia 37 North for 156 kilometers.
Even though I mentioned this in my 2022 episode, it's worth mentioning again that gas stations on the Stewart-Cassiar are few and far between. The number one rule on the Stewart-Cassiar is to make sure that you have more than enough gas, since the next station could easily be 200 or 300 kilometers away. Secondly, cell coverage completely disappears as you head north on the Stewart-Cassiar and only occasionally reappears for short stretches near some of the towns. One of the best investments I made before starting this trip was to purchase the Starlink Mini, and I'll be going into more detail on the Starlink service in a later episode. Suffice it to say that it was a complete game changer on this trip, as it allowed me to continue teaching an online class in addition to being able to monitor the weather in real time as I made my way north. If you're headed to the Yukon, where you can drive for hundreds of miles without a cell signal, I can't recommend the Starlink service highly enough. Okay, spent the night at a pullout north. Like not past the entire lake. It's north of Dease Lake Village. Got the defrost on. I can put everything back where it was. Found out last night I do have high levels of CO2. Is it CO2? Carbon dioxide? Monoxide. Dioxide. When I am sleeping overnight, which is a bit of a concern. So I gotta find a way to open that up tonight. I don't know if I just crack more windows and then pull back the shade a little bit. So I kind of need to brainstorm that. I'm sure I commented on this 2 years ago, but I just think it's so interesting. There's nobody up here. One car passed me so far today, and I'll pick up as the day goes on, but on my way up to Watson Lake, not a lot of traffic. Welcome to Yukon. Go a couple hours north. I found a pullout next to the river. It's sky does anything crazy, at least I'll have some water, but it's facing the wrong way. So maybe nothing will happen tonight anyway. Let's try that again. Heading south to Carmax, September 2. I'm heading south to get gas first because it could be another couple hundred kilometers. I don't know if those people have gas. I'm trying to be super careful with the gas thing. Carmax seems to be a pretty big town. Okay, information really helps. This is saying 4-hour drive, but to Dawson City is only, I saw it a second ago and then it just disappeared again. Is it 354 kilometers? And I have 453. So that's enough of a margin to get there, even if there is no more gas in front of me. As I left Carmax and headed north towards Dawson City, I ran into a couple of issues. First of all, my iPhone had some problems communicating with Google Maps using Starlink. The directions would load, but as soon as I cut power on Starlink, Google Maps would sometimes glitch out and not consistently let me know how much further the next destination was, which is kind of a big deal if you're watching your gas. Secondly, as soon as I crossed over the Stewart River, I ran into a massive road project that ate up another 40 minutes as I waited for ages for the pilot car to arrive. In addition to the delay, I was very grateful for the 3-inch lift and all-terrain tires on my all-wheel drive Sienna as we drove through several inches of soupy mud over the construction area that went on for miles. If you end up in a situation like this, be sure to check out how much mud has gotten into your wheels, as this particular mud was more like cement. The balance on my wheels was thrown off, which caused my van to shimmy quite a bit, and unfortunately, I couldn't get this mud out at the car wash later. It was only after arriving back home that I realized how much mud had made its way inside of my wheels, and it took quite a bit of time to blast it all clean. After finally getting to the Dempster Highway junction, I continued on and drove into Dawson City, hoping to find some lunch options, and was surprised to find many shops and restaurants had already closed for the season. I stocked up on supplies at the main grocery store in town and then headed back south to the Dempster Junction at Glenboyle. I filled up with gas and finally began heading up the Dempster Highway. On the Dempster effing highway, this is supposed to be murder on your tires. Across the river. Down on the Dempster Highway, raining, kind of gloomy, and I am 30 minutes from Tombstone Interpretive Center. Again, long stretches where I'm just like the only vehicle on the road. Not long, like an hour long, but not that many other cars. One car every 5 or 10 minutes. Even though trees had already begun to change further south, it wasn't until I had driven on the Dempster that autumn really began to show up in earnest. In fact, it seemed that more yellows and oranges were appearing with every mile that I drove north. I had come to the Yukon on this trip for two main reasons. The first was that I was able to book a few nights camping in the backcountry, moving between Grizzly Lake, Divide Lake, and Talus Lake in Tombstone Territorial Park. This was no easy feat, as camping spots generally fill up by the end of March. My reservations were for September 4 through 8, and I had arrived early just to scout out the area to see if there would be other areas along the Dempster that would work for landscape photography. The second reason, the main reason, was that I was really hoping to get some shots of the aurora, as I barely caught a glimpse on my last trip north in 2022. I had watched several videos on the Dempster Highway before heading up, but none of them really prepared me for the landscape I was about to drive through. As I drove through Tombstone Territorial Park, huge peaks began to loom up through the clouds on either side, and the yellow leaves of the aspens gave way to orange and red underbrush that coated the valleys and the mountainsides in all directions. It was raining as I arrived, and snow was already beginning to fall in the higher elevations, but as I continued north, the clouds began to break up. I was now searching for spots to shoot the aurora that night since it looked like it might be clearing up, but all I had to go on was a few locations that I had marked on Google Maps along the Olgivie River. It turned out, while I had gone up hoping just to find spots to shoot the aurora, I was completely surprised by the amazing landscapes that began to emerge as I continued north through the Olgivie Mountains. After an afternoon of scouting out the mountains around Engineer Creek, I had a rough idea of where I could set up just in case the aurora made an appearance that night. After setting up camp at a pullout, I had some dinner, did some grading using the Starlink Mini, and was surprised to find that it didn't really get dark until 11 p.m., as this area of the western Yukon was still on mountain time. After waiting several hours, I began to see a greenish glow beginning to appear, even though it wasn't completely dark yet. But eventually, by 12 a.m., it was showtime.